Welcome to Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong, a podcast where two good friends who used to be in a relationship have an unscripted, unrehearsed and frank discussion about what's going on in their lives. In this week's episode, Sean quizzes Josh about what it's like to perform a very emotional song in front of a live audience, and the two hosts then share their excitement about an upcoming Chappell Roan gig in London. Enjoy the ride.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. This is a podcast in which Sean and Josh, well, I'm Sean and that's Josh, we talk to each other about love, life, politics, pop culture, health, aging, and so many other topics. How are you doing, Josh? Are you all right?
I'm fine, thanks, Sean. I wasn't ready for you to begin then. I think I was like stroking my chin, looking off at something else on screen when you started. So I'm fine though. I'm just got back last night from my trip up north, which was very nice.
Okay, great. Well, I want to dive in and hear about the trip up north. But before we do that, I would like to ask anybody watching on YouTube or listening on YouTube to use the subscribe button that's under this video and make sure they get all the alerts about our weekly videos that come out. And you can also subscribe if you're listening on Spotify.
Yeah, please do. It helps our algorithms.
What happened in Whitby? Like, I'm so fascinated by Whitby.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was my first time in Whitby. It was my first time anywhere on the Yorkshire coast, actually. And I went up with our friend Anna, who lives in Leeds. So I spent the night in Leeds. And yeah, we went to Whitby on Saturday. And it was beautiful. I mean, we were so lucky with the weather. It was lovely weather. It was warm and sunny. And Whitby is beautiful. This lovely harbour town. And obviously the thing it's most famous for, I think, well, it's at least from my perspective anyway, is the ruins of the Abbey up on the cliff overlooking the town, overlooking the ocean. And it's the Abbey where Count Dracula was reportedly, according to the book at least, reportedly brought over by boat from mainland Europe. And it features in the Francis Ford Coppola film about Dracula. They did shoot some of it there. I don't know whether it features in any of the other films about Dracula. You'd probably know.
But surely there must have been lots of stuff about Dracula in the town, like information.
Loads. You'd love it.
Wasn't the Abbey part of the inspiration for Bram Stoker when they wrote the book?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't. You know, we did talk about doing a Dracula walking tour, or there are ghost walking tours, vampire walking tours, but we didn't because we had to get to our youth hostel to check in, so we didn't do any of those. We just did our own little walking tour around the town. But yeah, they wrote about the Abbey is in the book. But I don't know where they drew that inspiration from.
Okay, I don't actually remember the Abbey being mentioned in the book. My recollection was that it was the inspiration for Dracula's castle in the book, but I don't remember it being in the book.
Oh, really?
It's been a very long time since I've read the book.
Well, I could be wrong. Anyway, irrespective of our literacy accuracy, it's a lovely town, beautiful town, and it's that whole part of the coast was wonderful. We stayed in a little youth hostel just south of Whitby in a place called Boggle Hole. It's right on the beach. I mean, you walk out of the youth hostel and there's a boat ramp leading down to the beach. It's that close. And Boggle Hole
is a very, very humorous name. What is it again?
So Boggle is a supposedly mythical being that lives in the little caves and holes in the cliffs all along that part of the coast in North Yorkshire and I think Northumberland. And they are little, they're not necessarily bad. They're little sort of gremlin-like beings. And I think they can be good or bad. they look a lot like. I mean, I don't like to use any Harry Potter thing as a reference for many reasons, but they look close to what Dobby looks like in Harry Potter. That sort of elfin
What's Dobby?
Dobby. Dobby's the I don't know what his actual species title is. He's a goblin, I suppose. I think he's a
Is
goblin.
that not a Lord of the Rings thing?
I don't know. I'm see. This is it. I never was into Lord of the Rings. I never was into Harry Potter, so I don't really know the technical terms.
I've never read a Harry Potter book. I've never seen a
Same.
Harry Potter movie.
I've seen a few of the Harry Potter films just because before I went with my nieces to the Warner Brothers? No, whatever the place is in Orlando. I think it's Warner Brothers or Universal Studios, maybe. It's Universal Studios, and they have the Harry Potter thing. And I thought, well, I'll watch some of them. This was before, in my defense, this was before J.K. Rowling came out with all her horrible, bigoted, transphobic views. I wouldn't watch any of them now, but I watched them just so I had a bit of a point of reference for all of the rides and stuff like that. So
I don't know. Like I've just was never drawn to. Like I like vampires, but I've never drawn to sort of fantasy stories as much. I think when I was a kid, I did like, I suppose, The Never-Ending Story or Labyrinth, like as films. But you know, they were like blockbuster films that every other kid was going to see, so you wanted to see it. But as an adult, I've never had an interest in a lot of films like that.
Yeah.
What's the next sort of? You don't go to the movies that often, do you? Like to the cinema?
No, not in the actual. No, not to the cinema. No, I used to in Mexico, but being back in London, I haven't. Because it's so expensive. But
oh yeah, so expensive. Have you got any plans to see any movies coming out soon?
I was just talking. So on the way back from up north, I stopped in to see our friend Hazel, who I think we mentioned in last week's episode. I mentioned her birthday party and how hungover I was the next day. But I stopped in to see Hazel in Cambridge on the way back, and we were talking just about how these days so many studios are just instead of encouraging or creating new content, they just do remakes. They either just do sequels of existing franchises or they remake old movies, and it's just there's no artistic very little artistic input or value in that. It's just purely, it's formulaic, it's just purely financial, isn't it? And but yeah, they are making, or they have made, it's about to be released, a remake of Twister. And I didn't even think the original one I think it was in maybe early 90s with Helen Hunt, I didn't even think that was that good. It's not like one of my favorite films or anything, but I do love any sort of weather-related disaster movie. So I might go and see, I think they've renamed it Twisters, plural. I might go and see that just for the special effects and the storm chasing adrenaline. But
who was the other lead in that? It was either Bill Pullman or Bill Paxton. I don't know the difference between.
It was. No, I can't remember the difference between them either. But one of them
was it the man who was in Big Love?
Big Love. That was Bill Paxton, wasn't it?
I don't know.
No, I get them
honestly
confused.
don't know.
I get them confused.
And one of them is dead, right? What, the actor died?
Yeah, the one that was in Big Love.
Yeah, but I don't know his name.
I think it was Bill Paxton. Apologies if it was Bill Pullman. Yeah, but are you going to go and see the new Beetlejuice?
Yeah, it's already out in the cinema, so I do want to see it. I am put off by the extortionate price of movie tickets in the UK, in London in particular. But yeah, I really, really want to see it because not only like Winona is in it and hashtag Winona forever, but Jenna Ortega is in it, who I enjoy. I enjoyed in the Wednesday series. And also Catherine O'Hara is in it.
Oh, is she?
Who,
She was in the
yeah, who
original.
played Winona's mother in the original, and she's in it again. So
Ah.
it's a lineup of really strong women actors who I enjoy,
Mhm.
and I, yeah, it's part of my childhood. Not childhood. I was obviously a teenager when it came out, but part of my teen years, part of my Winona obsession. So yeah, I would love to go see it, but it's just finding the time. Honestly, I go to bed so early every night that like I get into bed at 9 p.m. So even on the weekends, I normally go to bed at about 9 p.m. So to go to the cinema is a really big undertaking for me. I'll have to go in the middle of the day. But
Mhm.
I am also excited about going to see the Joker movie
Oh,
with
Folie, Deux.
Gaga.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you see the first one?
Yes.
What did you
And I
think?
thought it was visually, it was very good. It was a very cinematic, dramatic, visual film. Lots of imagery, symbolism. But the one thing that I wasn't that keen on, I mean, I thought Joaquin Phoenix's performance was very good, but there was just something a little men's rightsy about the narrative in it. It was all about this man who was just misunderstood by society and emasculated by the capitalist system, and
And by
uh,
women, right? Like
and
there
by
was a kind
women.
of a vibe
Yeah,
that
yeah,
women
because he
didn't
had a
like
really
him.
sort of overbearing mother or something. I can't even remember it, but yeah. Um, but obviously that's just one reading of it, because it's also a trauma response. He had, look, I think a lot of trauma in his life. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was a very, very interesting film, but it's not the sort of film I would go back to. I saw it the one time, and that was enough.
Yeah, I would never see it again.
Did
And
you
I
like
also
it?
like it was I don't know if I enjoyed it, but it was interesting. You know,
Mm.
like there are some films you don't have to love a film to find it uh like a positive experience. Do you know what I
No,
mean?
that's true. Yeah.
And but I love Gaga, and so I'm looking forward to this. I think that Gaga is quite a good actor in the fact that she is such a professional that she just does what she needs to do. So
Mm.
even in rubbish movies like A Star Is Born, she was exceptional.
Yeah.
Or House of Gucci, which was
Oh, I never saw that.
quite laughably bad, but she was an exceptional performer in it. So it's this weird juxtaposition where she is such a hard worker and such a professional and she just wants to do the best. She's a real
Mm.
people pleaser, that she does these incredible performances even in these crummy movies. So
Mm.
I think that she'll be good in it. I think she'll be like do the role really well. But yeah, I do get a bit creeped out by that kind of incel vibe that I get from the movie.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But I'm assuming, based on the trailer, that Gaga and the Joker. I mean, what's Gaga's role in it? Oh, who does she
Well, her
play?
character's name is Lee, and it's Harley Quinn.
Harlequin. Yes,
Harley
sorry.
Quinn.
Um, I'm assuming that's something of a love story between the Joker and Harlequin. No, or
Yeah, maybe a bit of a like two misfits find each other kind of vibe.
hmm. I mean, I'll
But
go and see
I
it,
don't
I'm
know.
sure.
Yeah. But on the topic of movies slash vampires, I watched a trailer the other day for a remake of Salem's Lot.
Oh,
Did
right,
I
because
tell you about this?
you mentioned the original a couple of episodes ago,
Yeah,
didn't you?
so like it's a Stephen King book, and it was in the 70s, late 70s or early 80s. I can't remember when it came out, but it was a two-part miniseries that, like in subsequent years, got pushed together into this like 3 hour like movie, and it is great. Like it's really one of the pinnacles of vampires in media.
Hmm.
But there was a remake. Oh, well, there were lots of sequels that were really rubbish, but quite funny to watch. And I think maybe there was like a recent ish remake, but now there's this brand new remake that's coming out. And in the US, it's launching, premiering on HBO Max,
Hmm.
but in the UK, it's getting a cinematic release. And
Do you
the
know when?
trailer is very soon, I think in
Ah.
the beginning of October.
Oh,
So
in
they
time for
normally bring this
Halloween.
stuff out around Halloween time, right?
Mm.
It looks so great. It looks so fantastic. And it was scary. Like the trailer scared me.
Really?
Yeah, like I was just like, I don't know if I can deal with this.
Oh,
It
wow.
was
Okay, I definitely am interested now.
yeah, it's fun, but scary.
Yeah.
And they've tried to, have you read the book, Salem's Lot?
No, no.
I highly recommend it. It's a wonderfully written book. It's one of the only books that I've read that scared me as a child and also scared me as an adult. Like it
Wow.
gives me nightmares. It made me like leave the lights on in my house. It's a very, very scary book. And the TV show is a little bit cheesy and camp 70s vibe, but it carried over that fear really well. And this new film coming out looks like it does the same thing. It looks like it's really honored the book, the storytelling of the book.
So, I mean, I suppose sometimes a remake can be a good thing, especially I think when things were made in an era where special effects weren't obviously as developed as they are now. And the special effects can really enhance the telling of the story. But sometimes it's just, yeah, it seems completely, what's the word? Not tokenistic, but really opportunistic. Just, remaking something because studios think it will sell. I was talking to Hazel yesterday about it, and I was saying, something like Jurassic Park. When Jurassic Park came out, the original one, I think was it 94, 5, something like that. It was. I think it was at the exactly the right time for the special effects to be used in in a really seamless and effective way, and it just worked. And all right, it's not the greatest film of all time or anything, but it was just a very well made film. It sort of ticked all the right boxes. But the studios just keep rehashing it. They're all the sequels, and they're just getting worse and worse and worse, and
With
more and
Chris
more
Pratt.
problematic and racist and sexist. And it's just, yeah, I don't know. I just don't know what's wrong with the studios.
Do you remember how much of a big deal it was when that first Jurassic Park movie came out?
Yeah, yeah, it was huge.
I can remember I went to see it in Brisbane, in Australia, and there was so much demand to see it that they had to fill up every single seat.
Hmm.
Like, it wasn't like, in cinemas now in London, you actually book your seat and you get a ticket and a number.
Yeah, they didn't
But
used to
in
do that.
Brisbane back then, it was like you just file in and you fill up. But
Hmm.
they had people dressed on the opening weekend. They had workers at the cinema dressed like Jurassic Park tour guides with
Yeah,
light up batons, and there were so many people going into the cinema that they had to usher us in through the exit doors because the
yeah.
lobby was so crowded and you had to line up on the street. And
Oh
then you had
wow.
to go in, and no matter where they told you to sit, you just had to sit there, even if it was in the front row. And
Yeah,
they made every single seat fill up, and there were people just waiting around the block to get into the cinema.
yeah, yeah.
Why was
And
it
they
such a
just
big thing?
they just keep milking it for more and more
Oh,
money, and it's just the artistic integrity of it is just falling by the wayside.
what films were that big when you were a kid that everyone had to go and see it?
Star Wars, Jaws. I mean, it's
But I mean, you were really young when they came out. You
well,
wouldn't have been
yeah,
going to the
yeah.
cinema.
But the Star Wars sequels like Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. But um, and then later on, I don't know actually.
I
I mean,
remember being excited to see some of the Indiana Jones movies, like
oh
them
yeah,
getting a lot of hype.
yeah, yeah, they were huge. Um, I mean, it was mostly Steven Spielberg stuff in terms of mass culture, like mainstream popular culture. Um,
Talking of that, did you see the news this week that that story that every couple of years gets a bit of traction
hmm.
got a bit of traction about Goonies Part Two is
Oh
was
yes,
finally greenlit?
yeah, it's fake news. It's fake
Yeah, and
news.
that they came out and said, "Look, this isn't happening."
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, what could they possibly do? Like, you're a big Goonies fan. Like, what would the storyline be that they would do if all the
But
original people were in it?
well, this is it. Like, I think the studio may not even try and um, do a new story. They would just rehash the old story. Then they would put a modern slant on it. But yeah, I don't think the studios have any interest in any kind of artistic integrity or an artistic endeavor. They just are purely thinking, how can we remake this and get lots of money for it?
But they'll do what like they've done with Beetlejuice. So Jenna Ortega is the new blood, but Winona plays her mum, and then her mum is Catherine O'Hara still. So they can have the older people in it.
Yeah.
So to sort of like play to that the sentimentality and the what do you call it? The
Nostalgia.
nostalgia.
Yeah.
And then also someone like Jenna Ortega would like get like younger audiences to come in. But what if they did that? Like, who could they bring back if they had to bring back like two people from the original Goonies to play like parents?
Well, this is it. I don't think they couldn't just bring back one or two. They'd have to get all of the kids to come back, I think, to give it any genuine. I think the diehard, the old school Goonies fans would be very, very ripped off if they just had one or two token appearances by the original kids. Apologies, my microphone is slipping out of camera, but I'm not going to adjust it because it would just cause far too much noise adjustments.
But if it slips out of camera, can people still hear you?
Yeah, I think that it's the distance from my mouth hasn't actually changed. It's just if you may not notice, and I probably shouldn't have even brought it to anyone's attention, but
no, I wouldn't have noticed. Why is it moving around?
I think it's my microphone stand. It's just old and busted and doesn't work very well.
So there aren't any other movies then that you're looking forward to seeing?
I'm sure there are. I'm just not very good at thinking of any on the spot.
There is something that we are. There is something pop culture wise that we're both excited for this week, and that's we're going to see Chappell Roan in concert
on Thursday night. Her first UK show this year.
Yeah, so she's already played in Glasgow and Manchester this week.
Apologies. Her first London show this year.
Yeah. Have you watched any of the videos online of her performing?
No,
in these other cities
for Thursday night.
It looks incredibly loud from the crowd point of view. Like everyone's singing louder than Chappell.
Yeah. I think I'm not going to be able to speak very well on Friday from screaming and singing, and
I think I'm just going to chill out a bit, maybe somewhere towards the middle of the crowd. I mean, it looks like the crowds look really intense, and I'm just too old for this now. Like I don't have the stamina.
When you get there, you might be gripped by the Chappell fever.
Well, the last time that I really sort of lost myself at a gig where I really got excited and jumped up and down was Gaga at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the Chromatica Ball.
You were right on the floor, weren't you? You were just right by that the middle bit where she did the piano section.
I was super into that, really excited, jumping up and down for the whole time. Couldn't walk for a week afterwards because all my muscles were sore. But I was thinking about concerts. What was the first concert you remember going to?
What, in my life?
Yeah.
It was 5 Star at Wembley Arena.
Oh, you might have to explain to people what 5 Star is.
5 Star, they were the Pearson siblings. It was Doris, Lorraine, Denise, and then their brothers Leroy and Stedman. And they were like the British version of the Jacksons. So it's black family from Essex, I think. And they...
Oh, sorry, can I just do a really, really quick segue?
Yeah.
You mentioning that reminded me that Tito Jackson died this week. Anyway.
Oh, right. Okay.
You go back to your story.
So, yeah, they became very big in the UK in the 80s. And they had some really, really... I was a big 5 Star fan. They had some really amazing songs. And, Leroy was my first crush, actually. I used to have a Leroy poster in my bedroom wall when I was young. And this is really embarrassing, but I was a huge fan, as was my friend Ollie at school. Well, Ollie and I were at primary school, and then we went to secondary school together. And we used to go, I think we did it on 3 occasions. We used to get the train. So the family moved from Essex when they made it big. They moved to Surrey, like I think it was either Virginia Water or somewhere around there. And Ollie and I would go and stand outside their house with, like, I don't know, or like flowers and an autograph book, or anyway. It was sad, but this is a thing that young teenage kids do. And we did meet, not all of them. I remember Doris would bring like trays out with a pot of tea and biscuits and stuff for the fans, and she'd sort of come and stand at the front gates not every time we went, but I think twice when we went she did that, and would talk to us and sign things, and that was nice. And her mum, their mum, Dolores, she was really nice to the fans, and she actually invited me in once to their into their studio, and it was like their fan club headquarters upstairs. And their 5-star, they were all actually down in the studio when I was there, but I didn't get to go in there, but she took me upstairs to the fan club headquarters. But I remember then years later, after I'd moved out of my 5-star phase and I'd gotten into other sorts of music, and I was a big Madonna fan, so I'd really progressed musically. I remember wanting to buy tickets to the sort of, not the premiere, but the first screening of Dick Tracy, when the Madonna film Dick Tracy came out in, what year would that have been? 89?
91 or something? 1990.
1990? Anyway, whatever year that was. And I remember not having money, and so I took a lot of my old records to the sort of the vinyl exchange in Notting Hill, the record exchange in Notting Hill, to sell them. And I remember this sort of very cool looking woman behind the counter, and I was sheepishly getting out my 5-star records, and she was sort of raising an eyebrow looking at them. And then as she was flicking through, I said, "Oh, that one is signed by Doris from 5-star." And she said, "Oh, that's not going to make a difference, love."
They were a little bit tacky, weren't they? Like 5-star.
They were. I mean, mostly their appearance. Like, they used to wear the wackest clothes. Like, you look at some of their outfits and it's just like, that was never cool. Even at the time, that wasn't cool. Like, I don't know who was making their fashion choices for them, whether it was someone in the family or someone external, but yeah. The music was pretty good.
They had some good pop songs.
Yeah.
I do have some 5-star records here, but
you do?
I can't.
Were they bought from a record exchange in Notting Hill? Do they have Doris Pearson's signature on them?
Yeah. But I wouldn't be able to find them now. But
okay.
Maybe next time I'll look for one and I can show the viewers what 5-star look like if they can't be bothered Googling themselves.
Well, who was your first concert?
Well, can we just finish the 5-star story?
Oh yeah.
So, how did they sort of fall out of favor when one of the members was arrested cottaging, which means trying to get sex in toilets?
Most listeners would know what we mean when we say cottaging, wouldn't they?
Well, cottaging is a very English term. Like, people don't say that in Australia or the US.
Cruising, cottaging.
Like, in Australia, you say cruising.
Yeah, cruising.
And in the US, I think you say cruising as well. Yeah. But here, like,
I think in Italy they say batouage. I think that's what my Italian friend was saying, which is like it's a bastardization of a French word. So I don't even think it's a proper French word. But in other languages use words, they co-opt words from other languages. Anyway, he always talks about batouage.
In the UK, cottaging refers to in like the little toilets, the public toilets that you get around the UK are called cottages because they look like little cottages, right? And so people call that cottaging because men would go there or people would go there to meet other people for sex. And it sounds such an old-fashioned word, doesn't it? Cottaging. Like, but what's his name from Stedman?
Stedman, yeah, Stedman Pearson.
And he was
But yeah,
arrested.
they
and he
fell
tried
out
to...
of sort of public favor. Just I don't know. I think their look and they tried to go a bit rocky. They had an album called Rock My World, and that just it didn't chart very well. It didn't really have any sort of big hits on it, and they fell out of favor. And then yeah, it was maybe a few years after that Stedman was in the papers for cottaging.
And a few of them have toured, and Denise tours, and
Denise was
like,
on The Voice, wasn't she? But she didn't get picked.
Yeah. Oh, they were a good band, but I mean, they went through all their money. Like, they had all this money, and then they lived this incredibly lavish lifestyle. But then they all moved to the US. Remember when they stopped selling records in the UK? The family moved to the US.
Yeah, I did during sort of lockdown. I did listen to a couple of podcast interviews with, I think one with Denise and maybe one with Doris. Can't remember actually. I'll have to go back. But yeah, I think they reformed for one of those, nostalgia 80s tours. I think they did reform for one or two gigs. Maybe I don't know, some point in the last 6 years. But I don't think all of them are that keen on pursuing it. I think some of them would like to get the band back together full time, but I don't think all of the siblings are that into the idea.
What would you do if you were in a band like that? I know we've gone completely off the topic of concerts, but what would you do if you were in a band like that had quite a bit of fame? They had a lot of top 10 singles, but you just don't have any money left from it. And it's not the sort of back catalogue that would generate income. Like, it's not like Wham or something, which they still have, 100 million streams a year or whatever that generates income. What would you do for money? I know you were kind of too famous, or you became like a bit strange from the fame.
Yeah.
What would you do for money? How would you live your life?
Well, yeah, that's a position loads of people find themselves in, don't they? And, not to always hark back to a journey through Stock Aitken and Waterman, but some of the people that they interview on that podcast are people who have found themselves in that sort of situation where they might have had like a brush with fame, or a very brief moment in the spotlight in decades gone by, but then that hasn't led to any sort of sustained career or sustained stream of income for them, particularly, I suppose, when they were involved in production houses where they didn't get any of the royalties. They literally just would get paid to perform, and maybe if they were lucky got a good deal from a record company, although that almost never happens. So yeah, they would find themselves, maybe to the point where people would actually recognize them on the street, but they would have absolutely no income from their brief musical stint of fame at all. So yeah, it is really hard, isn't it? I don't know what people...
Yeah, and for a lot of people, they also want to perform. Like, that's what they want to do. That's why they got into a pop band in the first place. Like, I saw an advert the other day for a Five tour. So the boy band that was really big in the late 90s,
But
early
all of them?
2000s. No.
Oh no, because didn't one of them die?
No.
Oh. Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like, the three that are in the band still are Sean, Scott, and Richie. And the other two, like Jay, he never has done any of versions of the reforming that they've done. And then Abs, like, who was the rapper in the group, he was in one of the reformations, but no, he's not in this. But I don't think they would have had nothing from their time in Five. They probably had enough to buy a house each or something, right? But if that's what you did, say, from the time you were like 17 to you were 22, your real formative years, and then that's kind of taken away from you, what else are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah, it would be really
Like,
hard.
if you're a performer, you went to like a sort of talent school, you learned to dance and sing, and you got involved, and you had some hit songs, and you toured relentlessly for 3 years or whatever the lifespan of a pop band is,
Hmm.
and then that's just taken away from you. I find it quite depressing to think what these young people move on to.
Well, a lot of them do go on to do, things, sort of coaching things or setting up their own schools, um, dance schools or stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I'd say also a lot of them have a taste of fame and they think this is not for me, actually. I think a lot of young people aspire to have that notoriety, but then they get into that position. And we've spoken about this. Sorry, my microphone just dropped out of its microphone stand. I might just have to hold it like this for the rest of the episode. Apologies for the the shonky nature of our podcast. It's slowly slipped down anyway.
Well, I think that's what the position that a band like Steps have got themselves into. They see it as a job. Like they're performers, that's their job, and their job is to be in Steps. And they worked it out sort of later, not later in life. They're not old people, but they went away for a long time. And they went back and they're like, okay, this is how we do it on our terms. This is how we make the most money we can from it for us. And this is how we do it respectfully for ourselves and our fans. And they just do it like it's a job, like people go and work in a bank or people work for charity, or that's their job and they don't know what else to do. So they do it to the best of their ability.
Hmm. It's tough.
I really respect that. But my first concert, is that what we were talking about
Yeah,
before I went off on a tangent?
Yes.
I think my first concert was when Expo 88, which is like a world fair, or it's what the World Fair is called now. I don't know if it still happens, but it used to happen every, I don't know, 4 years or 2 years globally. It was like a exposition of different countries and governments would get together, and I don't even know how to describe it. But have you ever had anything like that in the UK, like a world fair?
Not in my lifetime, no. And I think they did, have them in the. I think isn't that what Alexandra Palace was built for? Wasn't it built for the World Fair?
Possibly, and maybe
I don't know.
And maybe what the Eiffel Tower was built for.
In
Paris. And so when I was young, I was 14 or 15. In 1988, it happened. It came to Brisbane in Australia, and I mean Brisbane. It's not the most dynamic or cosmopolitan place even now in 2024, but back in 1988, this was like the biggest and best circus in the world had come to our city. It was like this ridiculous thing where the whole city mobilized around this event.
Was it an expo of Australia or just an expo of Brisbane or an expo of Queensland? Like they're trying to...
No, it's an expo. It's the World Fair. So wherever it happens, so like all countries come from all over and have like a pavilion. So there was a Germany pavilion, a Swiss pavilion, a USA pavilion, and all the like a Fiji pavilion. So you would go and learn about the different countries, or I suppose it was kind of like a consumer show, but to try and sell different countries to people. Do
you suppose it just became superseded by the internet? Because now you can learn, from your own, you can be lying in your own filth at home and learn about other cultures. I bet it still happens. Really?
I bet it still happens.
Okay.
But this one, I can remember, like, it was quite fun. Like in the Swiss pavilion, they had a chairlift that you would get on, like you would take to go skiing. And you would ride it around, and there's like a big revolving giant Toblerone, and you'd go past. It was kind of like Small World vibes, that Disney ride?
Yeah.
And then you would go across, and they had indoor fake, well, it was real snow, I suppose. It was an indoor skiing ramp, so you could pay to go and ski there. It was only about 10 meters long, but the chairlifter would go over that, but you had to wait for hours to get on any ride, or you walk through the Queensland Pavilion and learn about sugar cane farming, and it was just naff.
It sounds very naff, yeah.
But part of what the big attraction was, they had a stage built on the river, so it was called the river stage. It was floating on pontoons, so the people would sit on the river bank and the acts would perform on the stage, and it was right near where, do you know what south of Brisbane? Oh,
sorry, had a sneeze. I was trying to will it away, and it wasn't going to. Wasn't going anywhere.
Well, the microphone works if that's what you're worried about. Pick that up.
Hopefully, I don't have like snot hanging out of my nose or anything like that.
In Brisbane, you know where South Bank is, where that lagoon is, where people go swimming. It was
City
all
Beach.
That whole, it was that whole stretch of there between Victoria Bridge and down near the Maritime Museum. It was this whole stretch. It was huge, huge site. There was a monorail there. They built a monorail that you could catch around South Brisbane. It was a really classic, short-sighted event. Like all this stuff that was built, lots of money that could never be used again after it. So, but the first band I ever saw, the first concert I ever saw was at Expo 88, and it was Brian Ferry. He was for some reason headlining one of the nights that I went to Expo. And then another night was that Australian alternative rock band called the Hoodoo Gurus. And I saw them at Expo 88. And I can't remember which order it was in. I can't remember if I saw Brian Ferry first and then a few weeks later Hoodoo Gurus or vice versa. But they were my first concerts.
That's pretty cool.
I can't really remember my first sort of proper concert where I went to, because they were kind of like just, I'm at Expo, I'll go to that. But I think maybe the first thing I saw was Kylie Minogue at the Brisbane Entertainment Centre on the, what was the Enjoy Yourself tour, maybe, or the Rhythm of Love tour? I can't remember. But one of her early albums, either her second or third album, I went and saw her concert. And that was the first time I'd been in an arena with like 10,000 people. And I was front row at that concert. And that was really incredible. And then after that, there was no stopping me. I went to see, a lot of the gigs that I had to see back then were at the Boondall Entertainment Centre because there was no other concert venue in Brisbane. So I would go and see Salt and Pepper there. I saw Prince there. I saw Belinda Carlisle.
What was the name of that venue in Brisbane that's no longer there? That we were at the last concert together. We went to see No Doubt there, and then just after that they knocked it down. What was that called?
Yeah, Festival Hall.
Festival Hall.
And Festival Hall was a very, very famous sort of mid-sized concert hall. How many people do you think were in that? A couple of thousand?
Probably about 4,000 or 5,000.
And yeah, we saw No Doubt there. Did you see anyone else there?
No, that was the only concert I ever went to there.
I saw Alanis there on the Jagged Little Pill tour, the first time she ever toured Australia. I saw Nirvana there when they opened for the Violent Femmes. I saw Smashing Pumpkins there.
Okay.
I saw the Cranberries there. Loads of people. But it was a really nice venue, and it was very iconic. And then they knocked it down and built a skyscraper with apartments on top of it. And now I think it's called Festival Towers.
Oh, right.
And it's just cheap apartments on top of where it was.
Speaking of music, we mentioned it, I think, in 2 episodes, but we keep forgetting to come back to it. So in a very unusual moment of self-promotion, I wanted to just quickly talk about my song Empty Seat because, well, first of all, it's the theme song for this podcast, So we use a sort of, well, no, at the beginning it's an instrumental version, but then at the end of the podcast, when the music comes back in, that's the normal version with vocals. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, but not only because it's the theme song for this podcast, but also, of course, because the song was actually written about the end of our relationship. And so I think listeners or viewers might be interested to hear a little bit of context or a bit of history about that. So if you're happy enough to talk about that for a few minutes.
Yeah, I can talk about that. But what's it feel like to have a song on Spotify? Does it feel weird?
Yeah, it's weird, a good kind of weird. And I think it's only been out not even 2 weeks, I think 2 weeks on Thursday. So by the time this episode airs, it will have been out 2.5 weeks. But but before it came out, I had sort of mentally prepared myself for the fact that it might get 4 listens or something. It wasn't. Of course, there's a part of you. I think a part of any artist who releases music publicly hopes that it will get listened to by lots of people. So yeah, it was a strange mixture of excitement and fear and imposter syndrome, but it's really nice. I mean, it's not getting thousands and thousands of listens, but it's going up quite steadily, I suppose. And it's really funny to think that people outside of my immediate sphere of sort of social and friend and family contacts, that other people are hearing a song that I wrote. It's a really nice, really strange, but nice feeling.
Has anyone who you don't know written to you to say, "Oh, I like this song"?
No. I mean, I've got sort of cousins and stuff who I haven't seen for 30 years or something, who are writing and saying, "Oh, it sounds great," and stuff like that. So that's nice. But no, I haven't had any.
They all want a piece. They all want a slice of those Spotify royalties.
They want a slice of my £1.16 that I've earned. Yeah.
Is that how much? Do you know how much you've earned?
Well, I can calculate it roughly, and I mean, of course, that's it's not even that. It's more like £1, out of which I have to pay tax. So,
but with that, right? So, say if that song makes £1 on Spotify in a month, what happens to that money? Do you have to split that with the dude who produced it for you?
Yeah, I have to give him 10%. But that's not the same 10%. For all. That's not the same for all artists. That depends on what split they've agreed to.
But you own the master, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is just interesting to me, and it probably is for a few people listening who the world of music publishing and putting something out is so unknown and scary for people,
and it's so different to what it used to be as well.
Yeah. So, if you want to put a song on Spotify, does it have to be registered with a publishing company, or does it have to have publishing ownership?
No, not with a publishing company. You just have to you have to do it through a digital distributor. So I went with DistroKid. There is CD Baby. There's another one. The name escapes me, but it's owned by the same company that owns TikTok. So some artists are using that, thinking that it's probably going to be beneficial for them to be with them, so that the algorithms will favor the TikTok views more. But I went with DistroKid.
And what, do they get a cut of every pound?
No. They have, I'm just trying to remember, with DistroKid you pay an annual fee and you can upload as many tracks as you like per year. I think with CD Baby the options were you had to pay for every track you upload. You have to pay a fee. Or actually, I think CD Baby may have changed their model recently. I think now perhaps they do get a percentage. So, and that the fee that you have to pay to upload a song with them is much lower, and then they say they keep a percentage of plays, so that gives them more impetus to try and promote the tracks. But it's really overwhelming, I think, because you look and I can't remember if it's something like either 10,000 or 40,000 songs uploaded to Spotify every single day. And it's just, imagining all of those songs and all of, it's not that easy to write a song, to record a song, to get the song on Spotify, and you think of all the hurdles that people have gotten through to do that. And then there's like 10,000 other ones every single day. It's quite overwhelming.
Yeah. And how many streams would you have to get in a year to make, I don't know, like what's a livable salary in London, like £30,000? Like, how many streams would you have to get on Spotify to make £30,000?
I don't know. I'll have to get my calculator out, which I can't because I've got one hand trying to hold my microphone very, very still. So
it'd be a hell of a lot of streams,
well, it's
wouldn't it?
0.002 US cents for every play. So you can do the maths.
What's that? What's that in pounds then?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, it's probably 0.00. I don't know. I can't think of it mentally. I need the visual.
I'm trying to work out 30,000 divided by 0.0002. So 3 zeros. Is that right?
No, 2 zeros.
2 zeros and then a 2.
Yeah.
Well, that's not right.
Why? What does it say?
Well, it's just giving me some weird thing that I don't understand.
Well, anyway, maybe we shouldn't work this out live on camera.
Maybe I'm not working it out correctly.
Maybe it's something people can work out at home. But anyway, whatever the exact maths are, it's a lot of plays. You need to be getting a lot of plays, like tens of thousands a month, to even make any kind of substantial income. So yeah, it's nice to see that people are listening to it, and it's really fun to look at. You can look at the cities or the geographical locations where people are listening, and it's really nice to think that people and places I've never heard of. Like there was a city in Brazil I'd never heard of, and it had 2 people listening there, and that's a really nice.
Do you think that's Vanessa and Nani?
It might be, yeah, it might be, but it wasn't.
They might have gone somewhere for the weekend.
Oh, that's true. Because they live in Sao Paulo, don't they? But it wasn't.
Yeah, and I saw on your list that Sao Paulo had.
Yeah,
listens.
Sao Paulo was there, but then there was another city in Brazil that I'd not heard of. Anyway, I mean, who knows? Who knows what the? But it's just it's really nice to see that people are listening to it. But yeah, it's funny to think. I suppose maybe it sounds a bit cliche or a bit obvious, but it's nice to think that a song about 2 very real people and a very real situation for the pair of us has now exists digitally until the end of the Earth's existence.
Does it feel like unusual to have something that's quite emotional, like the subject matter is very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
But does it change how you feel about the subject matter, knowing that it's out there in the world? Does it stop being so personal?
No, it doesn't change how I feel about it. I think it, the subject matter are the end of our relationship and trying to learn to navigate life on my own still has the same meaning and resonance to me as it always has. I suppose with time and with perspective, it's allowed me to think of it in a much more positive way, or from a much more positive viewpoint. But I think the fact that other people are listening to it doesn't necessarily change my perspective of it. I think, what for me, I don't know, I can't speak for all artists, but for me, writing a song or releasing a song, wanting other people to hear a song, part of it is storytelling, part of it is wanting them to hear your story. But another part of it, I think, at least for me, is wanting to give other people perhaps a framework or an understanding of the complexity of emotion, and giving them a framework onto which they can project their own individual situations or scenarios or narratives
Yeah.
onto. And that for me is really meaningful, to think that other people, I mean, I don't know, maybe people might not get that at all. People might just listen to it and think, oh, that's catchy. That's a catchy little, refrain in the chorus or whatever. They might not think of it any more deeply than that, but hopefully one or two people might. So, and that's a good feeling.
Yeah, like when I first heard that song, obviously, I cried because, it was very emotional, the content of it.
Mm.
And it obviously, like, when the closer you are to a period of your life that might be emotionally challenging, the more, like, the rawer the feelings are, or the more pronounced the feelings are.
Mm.
But as you move away from it, like any sort of grief or, processing any sort of trauma,
Mm.
generally, it doesn't always happen this way, but generally you learn the lessons, the intensity of it lessens.
Yeah.
So, like, it might still feel similar vibes to you, but not as intense.
Mm.
And also, having seen you play that song live so many times, it kind of takes that effect off it as well, because it just, it's not like it's making me dead inside to it, but it just takes off the
It takes on
intensity
a
of
life of its own, though, doesn't it? The song takes on a new life of its own, not external, but on top of the original meaning.
And I've seen you play it for like 60 people. I've seen you play it for 3 people. I've seen you play it on the back of that truck at the animal sanctuary in the rain. So it starts to take on those experiences as part of its story.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's now like that song. Well, I remember when you played that song and you nearly got electrocuted in the rain on the back of the truck. So it's not just a song about us or your journey of dealing with us, evolving our relationship. It also becomes its own thing. Or now it's your first single, and now 500 or 600 people around the world have streamed it in the first 2 weeks. So it becomes a different creature than. I remember the first time I heard it, I was living in Sheffield and you sent it to me and I listened to it, and it was very emotional. I actually didn't listen to it all straight through the first time. I found it too upsetting.
Oh, really?
But now when I hear it, it's almost like it's not about me or you. It's almost like it's just a song I know now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's when I play it now. That's how I think about it. I don't think, and I remember the first time I played it in front of you at one of the open mics, I was like, I can't look at you when I'm singing this, because I'm very conscious of the fact that, all the lyrics are about you and me. But now it doesn't bother me. Now I'm just like, yeah, it's just a song. It's taken on a world of its own, or a meaning of its own. But is it weird
Imagine
to be there when other people are hearing it, knowing that the lyrics are about you?
Yeah, like there's some weirdos. Like, do you remember? I won't say anybody's name, but somebody who used to come to the open mic, who was quite a bit of a challenging personality.
That doesn't narrow it down at all.
Said to me once that, "Oh, this song is really beautiful," and I said, "Oh, did you know that Josh and I were a couple, and he wrote that song about processing, us changing our relationship into a friendship?" He was like, "No, that's not true." And I said, "Yeah, it's true. Like, why would I make that up? Like,
right.
This person said to me, how could you stand here and listen to that song and not be in pieces?" And I said, well, because I've heard it. And he goes, yeah, but it's so such a heartbreaking sentiment. And I was like, yeah, well, it is, but if you listen to it, it's also really hopeful. Like it sounds like a positive message that Josh is learning to stand on his own 2 feet after being codependent all this time and in a codependent relationship. And I said also, if you hear something enough, it loses its edge, right?
Yeah.
I can still hear it and think, oh yeah, that's something that relates to me, or that's it's got a familiarity to it. But yeah, this person was just adamant that I should never even be in the same room as it being performed.
I'm so intrigued.
So
As soon as we go off air, you're going to have to tell me who that was. But yeah,
you'll know straight away.
okay.
But I imagine these singers who, like, I don't know, take Alanis, right? How many times would she have sung Uninvited or You Ought to Know in her career?
Yeah,
Like thousands and thousands and thousands of times.
yeah,
How could that mean anything? Like,
yeah.
where would you channel any sort of emotion to sing something that you've done so many times? I also question, now that I'm saying that, what joy would you get out of singing the same thing over and over? What's the
Yeah.
joy in that?
Well, and that's what a lot of artists talk about, don't they? They absolutely they have this very strange relationship with the songs that make them famous. They then come to absolutely despise them. And sometimes Cyndi Lauper's talked about Girls Just Want to Have Fun and how for many years she had to play it, but she absolutely hated it. Like she was dying inside when she played it. But now she's sort of gone through that and come back around to it again. And I don't know. Yeah, it would be hard, but yeah, it
And
must.
she had that reimagining it in the 90s as well, where she
Yeah. Hey
re-recorded
now,
it
hey
with
now.
like kind of a dancehall kind of vibe or something.
Yeah, yeah,
But you like when I would see, I mean, I know this is like a completely different ball game because I think someone like Janet Jackson lives on a different planet of what her sense of reality is because of how famous she was since she was a child. But I can remember going to see her in concert in Brisbane and her crying on stage. Like after she did the first 3 songs, she then sort of took a moment to stop and address the crowd and say, "Oh yeah, I'm here." And the crowd was so energetic and screaming so loud that she started crying.
mm.
And the more she cried, the more people screamed. And I thought, oh, that's really touching. And I was in the front row and all the fans were crying. And then the next night I went to the gig again and exactly the same thing happened where she cried in exactly the same part of the show and cried the same way. And I was like, imagine being able to cry on cue. Or then she sang another sad song later in the show where she cried. How would you that? I mean, that's just acting, isn't it?
I mean, yeah. Yes, I don't know. I mean, only Janet can really answer that. But I, when I'm performing, and I mean, I'm not a well seasoned performer, and I don't get to perform in like really big venues or anything like that. But emotions, like raw emotions, that are so far from my mind when I'm performing. I'm like, I've got to remember, chords, lyrics, um, eye contact. There are so many technical things like being near the microphone. There are so many things like that. So I don't have time to be thinking about the actual meaning of what I'm singing. So I do think that when that sort of stuff happens, it is purely theatrics.
But then you see someone like Kelly Clarkson. There's that famous video of her singing on that TV show
Yeah, the
where
song about her
she
dad.
doesn't break down crying, but she has to stop for a split second to gather herself because she starts to cry and choke up.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
seems real.
it does. I'd say
And
that's somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
yeah, well, anyway, so that's where we're at concert wise. There's probably a lot more we could talk about concerts as well, like um, you know who we've seen the most, the worst concert we've seen, the best concert we've seen.
Hmm.
But to bring it back to your single release,
Oh yeah.
what's your favorite time you've performed that song? Do you have a time where
Um,
you think, oh yeah, I really enjoyed performing that?
I don't know if I've got one. I think every time I perform it, I enjoy it. I think there was one occasion when we, at the venue, at the pub where we first did the open mic, there was a Christmas, maybe it wasn't the Christmas one, but maybe it was November or December of that, at that venue. And I think that was just it was a really nice, warm feeling from the crowd. It was really packed. And so, there were people, lots and lots of people right up against the sort of the performance area, because we didn't have a stage in that venue. And that was nice. I think I did perform it at the Ealing Broadway shopping centre. And I remember then thinking, or not like an out-of-body experience, but, I was sort of mechanically going through the process of performing, like singing the lyrics and playing the chords. And I remember looking around and sort of having a sort of moment where I was like, this is really weird. I'm in Ealing Broadway shopping centre performing this song. And I suppose thinking a lot about, what some of the themes touch on in the song, in the lyrics. And that's about learning to navigate life on my own, learning to find meaning and purpose and stuff like that. And I remember those thoughts. So it wasn't so much, it was the most enjoyable performance, but it was, it resonated a lot with me to have that moment of sort of insight during performing that, oh my God, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to get up in front of all of these strangers in a shopping center and perform a song that I'd written. That was not the most enjoyable, but maybe the most memorable.
Okay. Well, we're going to wrap it up now. So next time we're back on the podcast, we'll be able to share what our next concert experience was like for you, and that's Chappell Roan at the Brixton Academy. And if people want to listen to Josh's song that we've been talking about, they can stream on Spotify. Is there anywhere else they can listen to it?
It's on all the streaming platforms, so Apple Music, Spotify, ones that I don't even remember the name of. Deezer. I know Weezer's a band. Deezer. Feezer, I don't know. But you can find me on all streaming platforms and on YouTube as well. But yeah, in the meantime, don't forget
if people want to follow you on social media, where do they follow you?
They can follow me Josh and the Jumpstarts on Instagram is probably the best place. But don't forget to subscribe to this podcast as well. That's really important. And
that's really important. And after we finish talking, if you just stay on a few seconds, you'll hear a little snippet of Josh's song as well. Mm-hmm. And that might give you the incentive to go and listen to the full thing. You can follow me at Fat Gay Vegan on any social media platforms. And until next time. R.I.P. Tito Jackson. We didn't get to speak about your death, but I don't really have much to say anyway, but that's I don't mean to be disrespectful. The most interesting thing to me about Tito Jackson was that he was the father of 3T. Do you know that boy band?
Yeah.
But anyway, that's it.
That's a whole nother tangent. Right, we've got to go and start planning our outfits for the Chappell Roan gig on Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
So until next week, folks, thank you for listening to our rambling, ranting thoughts, and we'll be back in your feeds this time next week.
With better microphones. Bye.
Bye-bye.